going now to talk about, just as Debbie said, she sends a checklist to her PIs after she's had that initial meeting. And how do you put together a checklist? You want to be reviewing the funding opportunity announcement and also the SF 424 guidelines. So, we all probably know about, let's see, if you just go to SF 424 guidelines, you can pull these up. These are the standard guidelines for NIH. I think we looked at these on day one. You may recall they're filtered for the type of mechanism that you're applying for. But then on top of that, you might have an RFA that has some specific requirements. So I just wanted to show you a couple examples of how to review an RFA. So you can see I just put in NIH parent announcement for the R01. Debbie mentioned making sure that the institute that your PI wants to apply for is participating. We see that right at the top. It will tell you whether or not clinical trials are allowed. Just as she mentioned, there are two for many of these announcements, but definitely for parent announcements. So make sure you're grabbing the right one. The application due dates, this one's saying standard dates, you can click through on here, and this is the funding cycle. We looked at this also on day one. You can see that the P series deadline's coming up next week, as well as the T series. And then if you go down, the R01, February 5th. So that these are the common deadlines, but sometimes the RFA will have specific ones. You'll also want to check and make sure that the RFA has not expired. This one goes through 2023, so we're good on that. And then there's also information here about the types. Sometimes a PI will say to you, I want to resubmit under this particular funding announcement, but if you go down here, all it says is new. Well, then you can't do that. Are there any special budget requirements? The parent announcement doesn't have it. Award project period, 5 years. And then if you go down here, you'll see if there are any specialized requirements for the attachments. You can see all of the SF 424 instructions for this one are in effect. If there's a difference between the RFA and the default guidelines, the RFA supersedes the general guidelines. So always go with the RFA first. So let me give you an example of one that is kind of unique. This is one that I submitted last year with the PI and Department of Medicine. This was a AHRQ, actually. It was a COVID-19 R01. So again, we've got the same mechanism. This is an R01, but the only component that participates is healthcare research and quality. So if you're wanting to do NCI, you can't get there from here. The application due date, not standard. It's June 15th. That's your only due date. And look, this one has expired, so you can't apply to it anymore. If you go down a little bit further, the total, it'll talk to you about what types are allowed. Only new, you can't resubmit to this one. Award budget is very specific, not to exceed 500,000 in any given year or 1 million for the entire period. And the project period may not exceed 2 years. Now, most R01s are 5 years, but not this one. This one's 2 years. And then when you scroll down a little bit further, you'll see all the page limitations. Standard page limitations are in effect here. Again, you can click through, and NIH has a page that'll tell you exactly what the limitations are by mechanism. But then if you go back in here, this one will actually tell you there are a few specialized requirements as well. Budget components, special instructions for these applications. How about here? All the instructions for the research plan must be followed with the following additional instructions. Introduction limited to 1 page, specific aims 1 page, research strategy 12 pages, right? And then they must address these points. So I incorporate these into the checklist. So what I have got here saved in the folder to kind of give you guys a starting point, I've got a checklist sample, but again, you've got to customize it. You've got to find out what is your RFA, what are the specific requirements, but this is just the general default checklist. I always start out with this one and then I customize it from there. There's a checklist for pre-award clinical trials in here. And there's a lot of different, this, by the way, the PI proposal questionnaire, if you can't get that meeting that Debbie's talking about, you can send this document and it'll allow you to collect the information that you need to put together a draft budget and route that PIF. And just a reminder, the PIF is here, right here on the Sarah landing page. Okay, so that is the information on the funding opportunity announcement in the SF 424. There are templates in terms of templates of different types of checklists are also on the RMG website. So definitely take a look at that. And that's going to have K award template checklist, F award checklist. But again, that's your starting point. It's not your end point. You don't just download it and send it because your RFA may be different. And then the Stanford Research Development Office, SRDO, here also has templates available that you can use. Other details you may need, the Stanford Institutional Facts page, that's on the Do Research website. So you may recall on day one, we talked about if you log in and you have my DOR, then you can save the pages that you go to most frequently. And definitely one that I have saved is the institutional facts page. So when you're putting together a proposal and you need the federal employee identification number, it's here. The DUNS number is here. There's all kinds of cool codes. You can get the rate agreement if you need that to attach to your proposal, the human subject approval, all that stuff's here on the Do Research website. And then there's also information on Assist and how, Assist is the NIH application portal. It's really easy to find it. You just type in NIH Assist and you use your Commons login to log in and you fill in the information on the proposal. So that is an overview of how to kind of navigate those initial phases that Debbie's talking about, these initial follow-ups where you're downloading the application package, putting together your checklist, getting your arms around what are my budget limits, what documents do I need, what page limits are they. Then a little bit I want to talk about the RMG School of Medicine internal deadline policy. There is an internal deadline policy of administrative items being due 5 days before the deadline, that's business days. And then the scientific items are due three business days before the deadline. And I want to show you, there's a really cool document here that will actually show you, okay, so how do I know which one's administrative and which one's scientific? Well, this breaks it all down for you in the SF 424. It perfectly matches the NIH guidelines and shows which pieces are due at which time. And this was prepared by RMG. So this is what they're looking for on those items. And then the RMG suggested timeline, which is also in here, which is basically their requests of us, right? I mean, this is sometimes the PI can't meet these deadlines, but this is what they would ideally like, which is 30 full business days in advance as they're getting that PIF. If there's a PI waiver required, they've got that. If there are any subawards, they are notified of that so that they can get those requests out. Then 10 full business days in advance of the due date, they're looking for the internal budget to be finalized. And then the items back from the subawards. So OSR Form 33, Statement of Work, Budget and Justification. Those are the 4 documents that the subs need. I have a little checklist for that. We'll talk about that later. 5 full business days in advance of the sponsor's due date. That's when they want all the administrative portions that we just talked about. And then 3 full business days, the complete and final proposal, and the PDRF, which we talked about, the RPMs handle the PDRF, but they do need that taken care of. And sometimes they will enlist our help to try to get those across the line. So lots of information here to kind of help you get started in that particular folder. Let's